Okay, hi everyone. A friend of mine requested that I play this game and give my input. Probably the reason why is because I have a master's degree in strategic studies, and I've noticed that video games, generally speaking, don't do politics very well. However, this is a narrative game rather than a strategic game, if I understand it correctly. To be clear, I've never played this game before, I've only seen this in the menu screen. So, all I'm going to do is give my reactions and analysis as we play. So let's have a look. Let's get a little more volume here. Cool. Alright, let's get into it. So far it looks like it's maybe based on the Cold War would be my guess. And the name Suzerain, if I understand it correctly, is suzerainty is when you haven't completely taken over another state, but you generally are able to dictate their foreign policy or whatever else to them. And this game's highly recommended, so I'm quite looking forward to it. You are my enslavement and my freedom. You are my flesh burning like a raw summer night. You are my country. Nazim Hikmet Ran. Oh, he's in for a steep learning curve, that guy. Alright, mysterious black screen. 1908, Kingdom of Swordaland. You opened your eyes to this world. You came from a wealthy family. Obviously won't have resources. Your parents named you Anton. I know a philosopher named Anton actually. As the only child of a successful businessman, you had the chance to grow up in a wealthy family. Life was easy at first and you had the best education money could afford. Alright, that's an advantage. However, things inside the Rain family changed due to the absence of your father. Oof, never a good sign. This affected your mother and you negatively. The years passed. During a history class at school, the bell started to ring unexpectedly. You heard a loud commotion outside. As everyone tried to figure out what was going on, the principal announced the historic revolution. The kingdom was no more. The Republic of Swordaland was born. Did you not fully understand? No. You were happy that you had the day off? You were somewhat worried? Yes. Pardon me. After graduating, you passed the university exam with high marks. You had the opportunity to choose between several studies. You chose law at the Holsford State University. Well, law's pretty good. Law is excellent for operating within a system, but it's not good at responding to changes in the system. Economics at the Larkhaven Business School. Alright, that's good. I forget who it was that said, "Let me dictate the economic policy and I care not who makes the political policy." History at the Dyer University of Culture. Well, this is probably the unpopular choice, but I'm going to go with history. Assuming that we're coming at this game from the longest term perspective, it will be useful to know some history. During the first year, you attended a lecture with David Wischke. He was a well-known diplomat from the Foreign Ministry and the son of a president. See, just goes to show. It's who you know, not what you know. After observing the hall in silence, he explained why realpolitik is important for a successful foreign policy. Good move on his part, appreciated. He argued that a strategy based on practical and material factors would be much more successful in reaching Swordaland's ambitions. You agree in principle? Yes. He questioned what we're being taught? Yes. Your only concern was passing the exams? No. Alright, so between these two. Difficult one. Based on the fact that it's a game, I'm going to select you agreed in principle, though obviously you should always question what you're being taught as well. Soldiers entered the campus in the evening ahead of the first election. Many were in shock as the uniformed men created a security cordon and started arresting the teachers. A group of students started gathering in protest. Along with your best friend Peter Victor, and you decided to protest with the students or avoid any confrontation. Well, The correct manoeuvre is to side with whoever is going to win, and at the moment we, generally speaking, don't have any clear sign of who's going to win. However, applying the same principle, if we assume that the leaders' decisions are being made on the basis that they wish to win, and they've already moved to the stage of arresting dissidents, that suggests that all of the priorities above the position of arresting dissidents have already been achieved. So that means that it makes sense for us to avoid any confrontation, because if we are against the regime, we don't want them to know it, so we will maintain our disguise. And if we are for the regime, well then, there's no incentive for us to confront the people who are arresting our teachers. Now, who's arresting our teachers? Well, based on these pictures, a man with a Stahlhelm, and what's this? The barrel of a STG-44, perhaps, and some other random fellows. Anyway, we don't have a machine gun, so resistance would be futile. We heard a loud announcement that echoed through the campus. General Luderin declared martial law in order to restore the administration. Please stand back and disperse to your rooms. You quickly made your way towards the dormitory, avoiding the scene. You did exactly as they said, that's right. As you entered the room, you heard screams coming from the outside. You tried to bury yourself under the sheets, or you tried to go outside to see. Well, now here I will go against my previous advice and go outside to see. Gathering information is extremely important, whereas this is an act of cowardice. Can't have that. Even more important than our political ambitions is our honourable commitment to ourselves, and we are men of history. So, let's get involved. Should have predicted that. That's what I would do too. It was a gloomy year. The coup split the students into two groups and caused frequent fights. Torture and imprisonment of any opposing voice became a daily routine in Daya. You didn't want to stay idle and decided to join? Well, the core tenet of domestic manoeuvre is to separate your opponents into separate groups and instigate fights amongst themselves. So, the students are not a coherent political force in this narrative. Torture and imprisonment of any opposing voice became the daily routine in Daya. Regrettable. Morally speaking, this should be opposed. You didn't want to stay idle and you decided to join? That's right. A human rights group? Generally speaking, historically, human rights groups have been ineffective because human rights, despite what some may tell you, are not a universal given. Instead, they are the result of political action. And if the political hegemon of our, domestically speaking, of our society have set their canons against human rights, then the human rights groups will already either be opposed or destroyed or infiltrated. Not a good path forward for us. A student council? Possible. A student council might be useful in the sense that, generally speaking, the students are the bodies are known to be agitators and have some sort of political rebelliousness about them, but as we have seen, the students are split into opposing factions, so this, a student council, is likely to be mired in bureaucracy and endless meetings and disagreements and speeches, which anybody knows if they've attended any variety of student council is destructive, not only to anyone's political aims, but also to the soul. A political debate group. Now, this is the option for us. Here, we can engage in political rhetoric, which, as everybody knows, rhetoric has no contact to a person's true beliefs whatsoever, and also we might be exposed to ideas that we haven't seen or heard before, which will influence our intellectual growth. So this is the option for us. The dozens of debates helped you hone your oratory skills while also helping you grow your network. Two advantages to us. Even though the debates were pretty heated between different groups, you all grew from sharing ideas. Okay? Not the worst result that could happen. In one of the meetings, Peter introduced you to one of his friends, Monica, who was a volunteer for the Swedish League of Women. You were immediately attracted to... well, having to choose is not the best case scenario. Pardon me. Intelligence, always useful. Beauty, again, for a female political operative, also useful. Her diligence, also useful. So this is a tough decision. Generally speaking, one would prefer intelligence over other things. A person who is intelligent but not beautiful or diligent has many good ideas but can't put them into action. A person who is beautiful but not intelligent or diligent, generally speaking, gets moved around by other people. A person who is diligent but neither beautiful nor intelligent, well, at least they can commit to some variety of work. I would say that this is the high-risk option. An intelligent woman is going to probably increase our ability to maneuver, whereas a beautiful woman is going to increase our social status, and a diligent woman is likely to support us more strongly. And I realise I'm making a sexist assumption here that we're the primary actor, but let's base this on chess. If I'm the king and she's the queen, we want her to be able to move correctly. So generally speaking, these are all good options, but one should seek to maximise the number. A woman who is intelligent, beautiful and diligent would be prime. I'm going to follow my own biases and choose intelligence. Diligence is a close second, and beauty an extremely close third. The politically charged environment led you to the socialists, the nationalists. Stay away from any political organisation. Well, here our history knowledge will favour our decision making. Generally speaking, those who join the Reds have a marginal chance of success and a high chance of being executed, because of course when you're cast out from the Red organisations, the method of casting out tends to be being dragged out behind the sheds and shot in the back of the head. Then there is the nationalists, the young swords. Well, what do we know of the nationalists? At the very least, the nationalists have the asset of being able to align themselves around a single objective, independent of whatever their disagreements might be. And the third option is stay away from any political organisation. This is a wise move in the circumstances. If we assume that under the conditions of a certain amount of political upheaval, staying away from any political organisation is the smart move. So these are basically ranked in favour in the order that I would take them. I would definitely not join the socialists. Generally speaking, autocrats are not disposed towards socialists, and even if we do manage to join the socialists, well, there's some potential to make it to a sort of Stalin-like figure, but it seems unlikely. The nationalists certainly has some level of political operative advantage. Stay away from any political organisation. This increases our survival. Staying away from political organisations is the maximum chance of our survival. The nationalists is the maximum chance of our the success of our political operations, assuming we can take control of the organisation. Joining the socialists basically guarantees that we're forever mired in all sorts of terrible and meaningless Marxist debates. So, what is more important to us, our survival or our political operations? Now remember, if we increase our capacity to operate politically, we can therefore increase our chances of survival. But on the other hand, without survival, we cannot increase our chance of coming to the head of a minor political organisation. So we're going to increase our chances of survival first, because that's a higher priority than our political operations. Tough decision though. The radio relayed that the communist general Ricard surrounded Luderin and his troops, demanding their surrender. They refused, and heavy fighting broke out across the country. You just couldn't believe it. The army was fighting amongst themselves. Alright, well, the historical precursor to this would be the Red versus White armies after the Communist Revolution in Russia. Suzerain plunged into chaos. Yes, I imagine it would. Pardon me. The clashes escalated into a full-blown civil war. The horrors made you isolate yourself for a while. Monica helped you cope, and love grew between the two of you. Nice. However, it was a difficult time for love. Oh well, this is false. The old saying is that all of the best love stories occur during a siege. The chaos must end. Likely to give way to further chaos, I would say. The charismatic Colonel Tarquin Sol, really? A Roman king? Interesting. Orchestrated a sudden coup and brought an end to the chaos. He wrote a new constitution and restored stability. The people saw him as a saviour. He formed the United Swordland Party and ran as a presidential candidate. In the first ever elections, you voted for the United Swordland Party. You did not vote. Well, here we vote for the party because, again, we're maximising our chances of survival. USP won the election by a large majority. Oh, good. After graduation, you kept seeing Monica and noticed her interest to marry. Oh, very good. However, a letter arrived from the military calling you to fulfill your compulsory service. It was time to serve your national duty. Very good. A devastating civil war broke out in a neighbouring city, Valen. The distinguished Major, Yusuf Lankia, ordered you to lead your squad on a border patrol mission. It was a very cold winter night when you began marching out of Gumrin outpost. You could see your breath. Well, now this is an interesting development. Shadows of Storm of Steel. After several hours of marching through the snowy hills, distant noises were heard. Visibility was too low to confirm the source. The squad crawled forward in formation and found a spot to observe. A group of refugees had made it beyond the border fence. You escorted them back. We don't break orders. The refugees were in despair when they realised that you were taking them back to the border. Screams and protests ensued as they were restrained. You delivered them to the border guards. After several months of military service, your duties ended and you went back to civilian life. And we survived. Very good. You and Monica decided to share your lives together. After receiving the blessing of her parents, a ceremony was held in Hulsord. During the same year, you were offered a high-paying job at the governing United Swordland Party. See, sometimes military service does pay off. It was important to start your career on a good foot, so you accepted it. Excellent. Working for the ruling party was the easiest path to power. True. The financial compensation was too great to pass up. Also true. It was the best opportunity to change your country for the better. Also true. So, this is more of a narrative question than a political question. Does anyone want to paper, rock, scissors me? We're going to take this one. Because that is the path that maximally increases both itself and the opportunities for the other two. You became the foreign policy assistant to one of the more experienced members of Assembly. You worked long and hard, staying late at work, reviewing dozens of foreign policy plans. You were climbing the ladder. Excellent. Sol strengthened the Republic by removing the institutions and symbols as a former kingdom from society. Unfortunate but necessary, we won't speak up. Things were also looking up for the country as the massive economic boom continued and people were the happiest they had been in a decade. Fantastic. Election time came and it was decided. President Tarquin Sol was elected once more. Okay, things are looking up for the nation. The preparation of the most comprehensive trade agreement with Agnolia was occupying most of your personal time. Good, we want trade agreements. But your significant contribution to the trade talks triggered an invitation to meet President Tarquin Sol himself, who offered you a key position. You were to become the youngest member of Assembly. Fantastic, you accepted right away. Yes, we always want to be promoted, thank you. As the youngest MP, it was difficult to connect with the influential inner circle. You needed allies, so you brought Peter as your right-hand man. The birth of your son, Frank, provided a brief moment of joy and relief. You sacrificed work to spend times with your family, sacrificed family to improve your position in the party. Well, this is a moral decision that no person can make for any other, so I cannot advise anyone on this basis. It's between your conscience and your situation. I will improve my position in the party. Just like your father once did to you, you prioritised work over family. Along with Peter, you accomplished great things in the party. At home, Monica and Frank felt your absence. Meanwhile, President Sol increased his authority over the years. His growing ego started to cause strife within the party. The cracks began to show. Well, this is not a good sign. But it is to be expected. All political unity is temporary, and as political opponents begin to recede into the background, then allies become your new opponents. President Sol barely secured a majority in the election against the opposition leader. Over the past year, people were growing discontent with corruption and the worsening quality of life. Well, what happened to our economic growth? Has it been inequitably distributed, or has there been a downturn? Meanwhile, for a united Swordland party, Congress became louder as a leadership struggle started to brew. You watched from the sidelines, kept supporting the president, joined the internal opposition. We will avoid factionalism for the moment because we want to see which side is stronger before we make a decision. Generally speaking, we'll support the incumbent party because the incumbent has the advantage unless there's obvious reasons to support the opposition. But for the moment, let's keep our cards close to our chest. The contender for party leadership was Evald Alfonso, a reformist and talented business magnate with a growing popularity within the party. He seems like a good option. Meanwhile, in a desperate effort to secure votes before the Congress, President Sol was meeting party members one by one. He approached you too. Now it's our turn on the anvil. Let's see if we receive the hammer. The President offered you the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the next government if you backed him in the upcoming vote. Fantastic. Yes, please. Now, let's consider the options. If Alfonso, the opponent, wins, and we reject his decision, we're in much the same position. We don't know what our standing with Alfonso is. If we accept, we absolutely destroy our chances with Alfonso, but we keep our chances with the current leadership. Now, as I've said, we don't know who has the advantage, and generally speaking, the incumbent, because they're playing the defensive position, has the advantage. So we're going to accept purely on the odds. The party congress was nothing short of impressive. The banners of the United Swordland were decorating every possible spot. Fantastic. Thousands of influential political figures, lobbyists and benefactors gathered for this turning point. The voting for the party leadership began. You voted for Tarquin Sol, you voted for Elward Alfonso. Well, let's see. The banners were decorating every possible spot. Well, it seems to indicate a incumbent victory. And we cannot become a traitor or else we'll get shot. So, Tarquin it is. Sol lost the leadership vote to Elward Alfonso with a small margin. Extremely unfortunate. I played the odds and lost. Don't cry for me, Argentina. During the Congress, Sol announced his retirement from politics. Okay, the systems he had established were to stay much longer. His achievements wouldn't be forgotten. You were happy that Sol was finally leaving. An emotional decision. Were troubled at the departure of Sol. Yeah, fair enough. Didn't care about who was in charge. That's right, we want to be in charge. This has all been about political manoeuvring the whole time. A month later, your daughter was born. Monica named her Diana, the huntress, eh? She motivated you during a tumultuous period in the party. The general elections were approaching. The United Swordland Party was under the new leadership of Elward Alfonso. You joined the party effort and campaigned for him. Yes, he is the new leader, of course. We support him. Did your best not to help him. Don't know what the alternative is, so... During the general elections, the main opposition leader was embroiled in a sex scandal with his secretary, diminishing their chances. The extensive privatisation program proposed by Elward Alfonso secured an election victory for the United Swordland Party. Oh, what a turnabout of events. Over the next years, you did your best in order to make Swordland a better place. Yes. The health of the people is the supreme law. Tried all that was necessary to climb up the ladder. Yes, because we care about the health of the people. Our success is justified. Dedicated yourself to the party and its success. Well, this is probably necessary for our success, but generally speaking, we're interested in our own success, not the party's success. United Swordland Party. See, this is a difficult one. I'm assuming that dedicating yourself to the party dedicates yourself to the United Swordland Party. Now, wasn't Alfonso our political opponent? So if our political opponent launched a privatisation program and it presumably failed, causing the election victory for the United Swordland Party, on the other hand, did Elward Alfonso take over the United Swordland Party because it was an internal struggle and the privatisation program succeeded, causing an election victory for Swordland? That is unclear to me, and under those circumstances I will dedicate myself to the party. The presidency of Elward Alfonso saw many bold reforms, but was followed by a serious economic recession. Tut. Also counter-historical, generally speaking. Free market reforms lead to large growth in GDP, even if it is inequitably distributed. The other parties announced their bids for the 1953 election, but the unfair system hampered all opposition efforts to win. Thought your party could not survive another crisis? Were worried about the economic recession? Well, obviously. Worried that your reputation would be tarnished along. I assume this means along with Alfonso. Well, that's right. We don't want to go down with Alfonso's ship when it sinks, as it looks like it's going to. Still, there could be a turnaround. Sometimes reforms have a short-term pain and then a long-term benefit. But this is an analysis. This is an emotion. And this is political decision. So comparing these is very oranges and apples. Difficult. What are we going to do? Generally speaking, bureaucracies are have a fair amount of momentum. So this seems unlikely. And I am worried about the economic recession, but I am also worried about this. Alright, we're going to go with this one, because generally speaking, the economy is bigger than any individual politician. So this is our centre of gravity here. Together with Peter, your presence in the USP grew and you became the face of a new wing in the party. You effectively took over the leadership as President Alfonso lost control of the country. Fantastic. The moment to make a move had to come. You blamed Alfonso for the crisis on television, bribed and extorted Alfonso's inner circle, advised Alfonso to step down. Well, let's consider the options. Public attack? Useful in a democracy, and there are elections. However, I suspect the elections are rigged in this republic, so marginal utility. Bribed and extorted Alfonso's inner circle. If we can do this, this is the correct option. If we are not certain of success with this manoeuvre, this is a bad option, because if we try to bribe Alfonso's inner circle and they take the money but don't actually perform the actions that we've tried to bribe them for, then all we're doing is enriching our enemy. Advised Alfonso to step down. Well, this is the gentlemanly manoeuvre. However, we are not gentlemen. Let me correct that. We are gentlemen even when we behave in an ungentlemanly manner. Most of the inner circle abandoned him. Very good. President Alfonso started to reshuffle his cabinet, but it was too late. The party eventually voted you in as leader after your efforts. Following this, you announced that you would be running for president in the general election, with Peter as your running mate. It was your turn. Excellent. All of our political sausage making has finally been delivered up on our plate as a fine blutwurst. After visiting every city and town during the campaign, you made a speech on state television. You promised to enact democratic reforms. Well, this is the populist motion, right? A vote for me is the vote for the people, because I promise to do what the people vote for. But it has the downside of not really meaning anything, because you become a hollow puppet at that point. Preserve national values. Well, under the circumstances, given that there was previously a revolution and a period of rough reforms, I think that we can go with national values. But this, to be clear, this is a marketing decision and nothing more. Great nation of Suzerain, due to the incompetent leadership, enemies both internal and external are influencing our glorious nation. Today, more than ever, we need to unite under one flag and protect our values. Greiki Suzerain. The broadcast ended. Yes, that's right. On election day, millions went out to cast their votes. It was time to face the truth. Remember the 5th of November. Oof, the suspense. It's killing me. Chapter 1, President Reign.